Why do we have so many languages? Imagine trying to explain humanity to an alien. Okay, so there are about 8 billion of us. Makes sense. We all need food, water, and sleep. Still makes sense. And we invented more than 7,000 different languages to talk to each other. What? Seriously, think about it. Water, Wasser, agua, o, mizu. Same liquid, completely different sounds. At some point, an alien would probably interrupt and ask a very reasonable question. Why didn't you all just pick one? And honestly, that's a great question. Because having thousands of languages seems incredibly inconvenient. People spend years learning foreign languages. Entire industries exist just to translate things. Every international meeting requires enough interpreters to start a small country. And yet here we are. So why do we have so many languages? Well, first we need to talk about a construction project that may or may not have happened, the Tower of Babel. According to the biblical story, humanity once spoke a single language. Everyone could understand everyone else. Which sounds fake already. Humanity then decided to build a giant tower reaching into heaven. God was apparently not a fan of this idea and responded by scrambling everyone's languages. Suddenly, nobody understood anybody anymore. Construction stopped, the tower failed, and that's supposedly why we have different languages today. Now, whether you believe that story or not, it does reveal something interesting. People have been wondering about language diversity for thousands of years, because it really is kind of weird. The actual explanation is much less dramatic and much more human. Imagine a group of people living together 4,000 years ago. Everybody speaks the same language. Then, some of them leave. Maybe they're looking for better farmland. Maybe they're following animals. Maybe Greg started another argument and everyone got tired of him. Whatever the reason, they move somewhere else. At first, both groups still speak the same language. But then, small changes start happening. A word changes pronunciation. A new expression becomes popular. A few generations pass, then a few hundred years, then 1,000, and eventually the two groups sound completely different. Congratulations, you just invented two languages. This process has happened over and over and over again throughout human history. Languages don't appear out of nowhere. They drift apart. Kind of like how your group chat slowly turns into a completely different language after enough inside jokes. Let's take English as an example. Modern English is already weird enough. But go back 1,000 years and things get absolutely ridiculous. This is what Old English looked like. Not sounded like, looked like. Most English speakers can't understand a single sentence of it, and that's their own language. Imagine explaining to someone that you're fluent in English, but not in English. Languages change constantly, usually so slowly that nobody notices. Until one day somebody reads a text from 800 years ago and realizes it looks like a Wi-Fi password. This is also why languages come in families. English, German, Dutch, Swedish, Danish, and several others are distant relatives. They're all part of the Germanic language family, which itself belongs to the gigantic Indo-European family. Basically, the language version of finding out you're related to somebody through 17 generations and a suspiciously complicated family tree. In fact, linguists spend their lives doing something that looks surprisingly similar to detective work. They compare words, sounds, grammar, patterns, and try to figure out who is related to whom. It's basically Ancestry.com, but for verbs. Now, if languages naturally split apart, some countries become very interesting. Take Switzerland, a country roughly the size of a medium-sized inconvenience, and yet it has 4 official languages: German, French, Italian, and Romansh. Meanwhile, India has hundreds of languages, not accents, languages. Some of them have millions of speakers, others are spoken only in specific regions. Then there's Africa, which is home to more than 1,000 languages. In some areas, you can drive a few hours and encounter entirely different linguistic traditions. Human beings really looked at communication and decided maximum difficulty was the way to go. Of course, not every language survives forever. This is where things get a little sad. Languages die. A lot. In many cases, younger generations switch to larger languages that are more useful for work, education, or daily life. Eventually, there may be only a handful of speakers left, sometimes only one. Imagine being the last person on Earth who speaks a language, an entire culture, stories, jokes, expressions, ways of seeing the world, all stored inside one human brain. When that person dies, something unique disappears forever, which happens more often than most people realize. Linguists estimate that many languages could disappear within the next century. And yes, humanity is somehow both creating new slang every week and deleting entire languages at the same time. We're talented like that. Now you might be wondering, why don't we just switch to one global language? After all, English is already everywhere. The internet uses it, science uses it, business uses it. Surely we're heading toward one language eventually. Well, maybe not. Because language is not just a communication tool. It's also identity, culture, history. People don't just speak a language, they belong to it, which is why language debates become emotional incredibly fast. Also, have you ever tried getting humanity to agree on anything? We can't agree on pizza toppings. We can't agree on operating systems. We can't even agree on what color some dresses are. A single global language seems slightly ambitious. Technology might help though. Translation software gets better every year. You can already point your phone at signs in foreign countries and magically understand them, which would have looked like literal wizardry 20 years ago. Real-time translation is improving too. Maybe one day, language barriers will mostly disappear. But even then, languages themselves probably won't, because people don't create languages only to exchange information. They create them to tell stories, make jokes, write songs, complain about traffic, and argue with strangers on the internet. Some traditions are universal. So why do we have so many languages? Because humans spread across the planet, split into different groups, lived separate lives, and slowly transformed one language into thousands, over thousands of years, one tiny change at a time. Which sounds incredibly inefficient, and maybe it is, but it's also kind of beautiful. Because every language is evidence that a group of humans went on their own journey and left their own mark on history, even if that mark is just inventing a completely different word for water. And honestly, if humanity couldn't agree on pineapple pizza, expecting us to agree on one language was probably never realistic.
Follow for more simple explanation.